Welcome back to another designer profile video, and in this one we're going to look at Tres or jchantres and his course Yooper. Now in this one we're particularly going to focus on his creativity and how above all else he always creates kind of fun golf shots to hit and interesting questions, whether it be through use of elevation or just how the ball reacts when it hits the ground. He's gotten a lot more strategic with recent designs, but that's never in a kind of penal way where you have to hit this spot or you've got no shot. There's always an option and usually some really fun golf to be played. Now, as you can see from this one, the first striking feature is that it's all bunkerless. We're not going to have any whatsoever. And it's based on Marquette or Grey Walls Golf Club in Michigan. So there's a lot of rocky outcroppings which come into play. But you can also see the really significant elevation change on this plot. And I think that's another thing to really look at for this one, because that's handled absolutely masterfully. So enjoy. And speaking of elevation change, the first hole features a load of it. We're heading straight downhill, and it gives you, as ever, that taste of what to expect. Wide open fairway, some rocky outcroppings to avoid, and a green, and we don't see any bunkers anywhere. However, there is a preferred angle. The further right you are, the more you're shooting straight down this green, which has fall-offs both left and right, so it can be tricky coming into from either side. You want to be dead on. Otherwise though, although it's a long four, it's pretty flat, so you just want to be shooting down straight down that green. One of two par fours that I couldn't separate. Fourth is our first best par four. This one's all about risk and reward and options, and kind of a mix of hazards, both vertical and horizontal. You want to be as far right as you can, using the natural land to get there, but you've also got these rocky outcroppings getting in the way. To add to that, it's drivable, but you don't want to be left. You certainly don't want to be right. So if you're going for the green, you've got to be right on line. And that green complex, again, rewards you from the further right you are. It's just a really clever hole and shows that you don't need bunkers, just some very wild land. Best par 5 also sees a tie between the 11th, and in fact all three of the par 5s, only three of them are really strong, but we're going to pick 11 and 16 for this. Now this one, very downhill tee shot, but an even more downhill approach, and it's the approach that's magical with this one. You have to find a narrow fairway in order to be able to hit it, but you'll notice the lack of bunkers doesn't really matter. You still have to be super precise with your approach in order to work out where to land it to leave the ball on the green. And I always found that really, it's a real conundrum whenever I approach this hole, and something that just never gets old because the factors will always change. The second of our two best par 4s, the 12th, is just a stunner visually and in terms of how it plays. You hit over this spectacular large ravine to an undulating fairway, but the key feature for this one is a mound just short of the green. It's sited just the other side of a ridgeline, and again you want to be thinking about how the ball's going to react. Further left you are, actually the further right it's going to go, which probably means you want to be further right off the tee, but that's harder to work out. So it's just a really interesting shot done by the way the ground moves. We've only put 3 par 3s on the course. The favourite of them for me was the 15th, mainly because it has that visual drama of the gorge in front, and I'm always a sucker for a short wedge shot par 3. Again though, there's slopes to add interest. The green flows front to back, so you want to be really careful to land it short if you can, but that brings the gorge more into play, and also thinking about how much spin it's going to have, how it's going to release out, because you don't want to leave the ball above the hole. The second of our par 5s, and this one features a really tumbling view. You hit this tee shot that's kind of like a parachute shot. It's just going to fly down and down and down, some 100 feet to the fairway. You then actually hit up towards this green, and the approach shot's an interesting one because it puts a real premium on distance control due to that massive false front at the beginning, but it also goes into a bit of a spine, so you don't want to be miles over it, but you do want to be just over that, and that poses a question that changes again as you play it and makes you really think about not just whacking a shot into that, but will it just creep over. Our closing hole and the third of the 3 par 5s featured in this video, the first with all of 1 par featured on one course. Now this one, you have that rocky mound in the middle that you've got to avoid. Ideally you want to be right of that, but that's a little bit of a tighter window. There is more of an option to land it left. If you manage to hold that and the high side, the fairway cambers slightly towards the left, you've got a better look at this disconnected green, and there's a small amount of fairway apron to run it on, but the green itself, tiny, very little pinnable space and some interesting slopes that are going to funnel the ball away from the pin for the most part. But it is a closing eagle opportunity, which is always a good way, and you have that clubhouse just behind. So what can you take from this course and use in your own designs? Well, firstly, the power of just elevation change and land movement to create interesting shots. I'm aware I've used the word interesting a lot without really ever defining what that means, and it's going to be different to different people, but for me it's a shot like on 11, this one where you're hitting a 3-wood from this little bit of fairway and trying to work out roughly where you want something to land. There's no precise point. You've got to try to work it out, figure it out, and watch the ball try to work its way down. For me, I love golf where you have to land a ball somewhere for it to roll somewhere else. And the more you can do that and offer a player options and say, you can hit it in anywhere in here and it's going to go somewhere different, it's your job to work it out. They can play it different ways. They could hit draw into that, they could hit a fade higher up and have it long, come down softer. They can try and go straight because actually there's less land movement here than there is here. Those sorts of options, rather than it being just hit here or here or here, where I've got complete freedom to choose where I want to put it, that for me is really interesting golf, particularly when you combine that with the elevation change and camber, etc. Now additionally, how does he accomplish this? Well, green complexes that are just a lot of fun. There's loads of movement and red slopes on the green, and you've got backstops that you can use, so to this pin, or you've got false fronts that you want to try to work your way around as well. The further right we play, the more we're getting around that one, a little bit at the front. Admittedly, your drive's going a bit further than that. So I think that would be the first one, like creating entertaining shots. Secondly, that you don't need bunkers. I'm not saying you should go bunkerless, it's really difficult, but you certainly don't need to scatter them everywhere because often they can limit playability. And if you end up down here, that's a tougher shot than any bunker shot that you will have in this game. Other things that you can take away from this, I mean, look at the simplicity of it. There's one tree, one type of grass, and it just makes the golf holes themselves and those rocks really stand out. So that's something to figure out as well. I think the final thing to take from this is just being bold, and the fact that you can use all of these red slopes and big undulations and big terrain, provided you're playtesting, checking, / having the experience to know what works and what doesn't. But if you look at every single one of the greens on here, there's something unique and quirky on here, and that, when harnessed with like understanding of how that's going to work, can really lift a course from good to great. So that's the Yooper, and I think it's a really entertaining golf course to play. It's just a lot of fun. The huge amounts of short grass and limited bunkers means you can usually find lots of fairways and it's not too penal. So enjoy your rounds. See you again soon.